Anti-austerity protests engulf Lebanon for a second day. The last straw was a proposal to tax WhatsApp calls. A huge march for freedom in Barcelona. Catalonia is shut down in protest at jail sentences for independence leaders. And Mexico's president says lives are more important than a criminal as he backs the decision to release El Chapo's son. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I am Doris Polo. Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad Hariri has given his coalition partners a 72-hour deadline to back key reforms as protests against austerity measures continue to rock the country. In the capital, Beirut, protesters threw plastic bottles at the police, who responded with tear gas. This is the second day of protests against the government's plans to impose new taxes on fuel, tobacco, and social media platforms. In the southern city of Sidon, protesters blocked the main highway and burned tires outside the home of Lebanese parliament speaker. The nationwide protest, Lebanon's biggest in years, brought ordinary people from all sectors and walks of life to the streets, carrying banners and chanting slogans calling on the government to resign. And in the northern city of Tripoli, protesters also burned tires to block the roads. The government has now withdrawn its unpopular proposal to tax WhatsApp calls, but the protesters say the whole political system and its economic policies are rotten.
We want the downfall of the regime, all the way from the top of the pyramid, because one person only cannot live while the rest remain, because we are hungry, because we are dying, because we are tired. They have no conscience. There isn't a single thing. There is nothing.
We are here with one voice to demand a solution from the parliament to hold elections and for all these politicians to leave. We're fed up with the degrading, disgusting situation. We don't have any work, electricity, water, pension funds. No decent living standards exist here or anywhere else in Lebanon. These people did not take to the streets to cause riots or chaos. They took to the streets to express their pain and suffering caused by this political situation that's been going on for 3 years.
The protesters also accused the governing elite of corruption. The Prime Minister told his fraction's coalition they needed to fix things fast.
Either our partners in the coalition government give a precise and final answer that convinces me, the Lebanese people, the international community, and all those expressing anger on the streets today, that there will be a decision from the government members to begin reforms and to stop government waste and corruption, or I will have a different message to share. A very short time limit. And this should be clear for everyone. And if you were wondering how long is this short time limit, it's 72 hours.
A day of huge peaceful protests in Catalonia has ended in more violence. As night fell, the region's main city, Barcelona, resembled a war zone with thick clouds of smoke filling the air. Riot police charged protesters and fired tear gas while a police van was set alight. There were also burning barricades and rubble everywhere as protesters fought running battles with riot police. Earlier in the day, hundreds of thousands of demonstrators arrived in Barcelona for what they called a March for Freedom. Protesters were heard chanting "Freedom for political prisoners" as they waved their flags. Some of the marchers began their trek on Wednesday from municipalities across the northeastern Spanish region. This is the 5th day of mass protests against the jail sentences handed out to 9 independence leaders. Now, protesters blocked traffic on 2 routes connecting Spain and France as the general strike got underway across Catalonia. The protesters set up barricades on the AP7 motorway at La Junquera near the city of Girona in eastern Spain, as well as on the N2 road near the border. Our correspondent Joan Ortiz was with the protesters in Barcelona.
This general strike has developed peacefully so far. People have been blocking roads, there have been demonstrations all over Catalonia, and now a huge march and rally is underway in the center of Barcelona. Last night and in the early hours of the morning, there were a number of violent incidents, not only in Barcelona, but in other towns and cities of the region. It is worth explaining who these young people are who have been protesting, setting up barricades and lighting fires in the streets. Some of the media have been describing one group as anarchists, including some who have allegedly come here from France and Germany. But the online outlet El Público says many of those provoking violence are police infiltrators. That would certainly be a scandal if it were to be confirmed. On a different note, the former Catalan president Carles Puigdemont has presented himself to the Belgian prosecutors after a Spanish judge reactivated a European arrest warrant for him. However, the Belgian prosecutors ruled that he can remain in freedom there, but he will have to ask for permission if he wants to leave Belgium. Of course, he has been traveling quite a lot as he wants to spread the campaign internationally.
That was our correspondent Joanne Ortiz with that report. Guyana's President David Granger will head to Cuba on Saturday as he continues to receive cancer treatment. He disclosed this on the sidelines of the accreditation ceremony for Germany's first woman ambassador to the country on Thursday. President Granger told reporters that every 90 days he has to go to Havana for a checkup. Last year he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma and has undergone several rounds of radiotherapy treatment. Doctors had reportedly given him the all clear in July. Meanwhile, the 77-year-old is expected to lead his party into the March 2020 regional and general elections. Guyana's opposition People's Progressive Party is yet to select a prime ministerial candidate for the March 2020 general elections. Ex-Army Chief Mark Phillips was tipped to fill the position. However, opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo has shut down those claims. He says Phillips has not been selected as running mate for the party's presidential candidate, Irfan Ali. Jagdeo says nominations for the number 2 spot on the opposition party slate will be decided at the end of November.
We are not going to be engaged with no party or individual in trading positions. You know, you're only coming in because of this or that. And Mark Phillips said, I want to be part. I like the vision. I like the program for the country. He's a patriot too, and he wants to be part of the team. When we come to selecting the prime ministerial candidate, the names are going to come up. We'll have a discussion, and then we'll make a selection. But it's not dependent. Him being part of the team is not dependent on that.
Trinidad and Tobago's Labour Minister Jennifer Batiste Primus has announced that she is bowing out of politics ahead of local and general elections.
As the Minister, and I should say as your outgoing Minister of Labour and Small Enterprise Development, yes, because we all have to prepare. I am one of those persons who prepare every phase of my life. God bless me to serve you for a 5-year period, and I am making sure that the foundation that I lay and the baton that I have created will be handed over to the next Minister of Labour and Small Enterprise Development to continue his or her journey across the landscape of Trinidad and Tobago, and I would fade merrily and happily into the sunset with Mr. Primus.
Dozens of people gathered outside the U.S. Embassy in Haiti to protest against the country's support for the Jovenel Moïse administration. The protesters, including leaders of various opposition parties, accused the U.S. government of interfering in Haiti's internal affairs. They have since demanded that the White House respects Haiti's right to self-determination and allow its citizens to decide their own destiny.
It's the Americans who are keeping President Jovenel Moïse in power. I cannot take the long road to denounce this, but instead I came here directly so the world can see us and we can bring the news. To tell them that it's the U.S. Embassy that is keeping President Jovenel Moïse in power.
Police in the Mexican city of Culiacan have been forced to free a son of the jail drug leader Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. This after gunmen from the Sinaloa cartel launched an intense assault on security forces who had detained him. Fierce gun battles broke out between police and the gunmen in the city on Thursday afternoon after news spread that a police patrol had detained Ovidio Guzman. Videos posted on social media showed images of heavily armed gunmen roaming the city in pickup trucks. Now, as more gunmen from the Sinaloa cartel headed towards the city, the police said they were outnumbered and freed El Chapo's son in order to pacify the city. El Chapo is currently serving a life sentence in the United States, but Culiacan was for many years the base of the Sinaloa cartel, which he built into the most powerful drug trafficking organization in the world. During the clashes, more than 30 inmates escaped from the city's Aguaruto prison. Residents said the prisoners were going to fight for the cartel. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said he supported the security officials in the decision to release El Chapo's son.
They took decisions which I backed, which I endorsed, because the situation was very difficult. And the lives of many citizens, of many human beings, were at risk. And they decided to protect those lives. And I agreed with that. We don't want massacres. That is over. Catching a criminal can't be more important than people's lives. They took that decision, and I support it.
This Friday, a court in New York found Tony Hernandez, the brother of the president of Honduras, guilty of drug smuggling. But testimony given in the case suggested that other members of the Honduran government elite could be implicated, including the president himself.
After learning that various witness statements in the case against Antonio Hernandez pointed to some government officials, Honduras started taking to the street to demand an investigation into and punishment of the leaders involved.
They have embarrassed the country and have reduced Honduras to their own backyard. They want to continue looting and committing crimes shielded by amendments to the criminal code.
This comment comes as the National Anti-Corruption Council warns that members of the Hernandez government are preparing a law which will consider offering impunity to persons who participate in organized crime.
The proposed criminal code will grant impunity to those identified, as well as to people who've already been sentenced on corruption charges, meaning they can appeal. If this criminal code goes into effect, they can hide behind it, and that would be terrible.
Civil society organizations who have taken to the streets are calling for the government to step down, as it has been an accomplice to organized crime.
The problem that we have is that there are no state powers. We have a judicial system that is unable to execute justice under the existing legislation.
Economists have said that if there is no change to the government structure, the country's financial crisis will worsen.
There is a real impact to this country's global image. Investors won't want to put their capital in a country governed by drug dealers and criminals, because ultimately they want legal security.
Opposition sectors have said that protests will increase once the judgment is handed to President Juan Orlando Hernandez's brother. Antonio Hernandez is accused of drug trafficking on a large scale, arms trafficking, and giving false testimony.
A subway price hike has led to protests in Chile. We'll have details on this and other stories after the break. Welcome back. Chilean students are protesting against an increase in subway fares. Hundreds of demonstrators forced their way into a metro station in Santiago without paying for their tickets. The new fares mean people have to pay more than $1 for each trip, making it one of the most expensive subway tickets in the region. The authorities condemned the protests and entered the station to repress them. Students in Colombia have been protesting against President Ivan Duque's plans to reform labor and pension laws, as well as privatization proposals. Students, trade unions, and indigenous organizations took to the streets across Colombia's most important cities. The Colombian Education Workers Federation said the measures would affect young workers and weaken pensions. The protesters also rejected what they called the government's failure to comply with the 2016 peace agreements. Now, Colombia will be holding regional elections on October 27th, but the campaign has been marked by violence on a scale not seen in recent years.
With just a week to go before regional elections in Colombia, the organization Peace and Reconciliation has presented a detailed analysis of electoral violence across the country in the period from October the 27th, 2018 to October the 11th this year.
Today we have 230 victims, of which 22 are murderers. The rest are attacks, threats, and other kinds of violence. This is double of what we saw in the 2015 elections. Another aspect is that it's not just one ideology or political party that is being attacked. Most of the victims are from the opposition coalition led by Colombia Humana and the Green Party, but the ruling coalition led by the Democratic Center has also been attacked. The traditional parties are the ones that have the fewest victims.
The report points out that there are several kinds of killers involved. 80% of the incidents are carried out by unknown hired gunmen, while the other 20% are carried out by paramilitary groups, ELN guerrillas and FARC dissidents. The violence has affected at least 28 of Colombia's 32 departments.
The violence is concentrated mainly in 5 departments: La Guajira, Cauca Valley, Cauca, Tolima, and Antioquia. This tells us that there is no simple correlation between electoral violence and areas abandoned by the FARC. Because in the north of the Cauca Valley, for example, there was no presence of the FARC, yet it is one of the main focuses of violence this year.
The situation has become worse as the regional elections approach on October the 27th. Attacks and intimidation against candidates are increasing. A week ago, there were attacks on the headquarters of left-wing parties in Bogotá, where security should be tighter.
We don't have any clear information about who was responsible. We know that this place is extremely well protected. So, we are very concerned about how it was possible for them, in the center of Teusaquillo, to carry on an attack on the headquarters of the Communist Party and the Patriotic Union 8 blocks away, and 10 or 15 minutes later to get into our offices. And absolutely nothing happens to them, and no one is arrested.
The political coalition of the left in Colombia is demanding urgent guarantees for its political activity. And since the investigations have made no progress, they assume the security services are not taking action. They're requesting the presence of the European Union and the OAS at the elections to ensure that they can take part in peace.
Bolivia will elect its next president on Sunday. Our correspondent in La Paz, Freddy Morales, says there is unprecedented international interest in these elections.
The election preparations are continuing in complete calm. We are seeing an unusual level of international interest in these elections, which is reflected in the number of international observers who have registered with the Electoral Authority. There are 235 of them in all, and the countries they come from show where that interest is strongest. There are 99 diplomats from 32 foreign embassies in Bolivia. The second largest group is from the Organization of American States, with 92 delegates. The European Union registered 2 election experts a month ago, who since then have been touring voting districts. On top of those, there are 3 members of the European Parliament and 9 observers from the British Foreign Office. So there is a significant interest from European countries. There are also Bolivian observers, of course. The opposition parties that are running second and third in the opinion polls, the Citizen Community Party, and Bolivia says no, announced that they are sending 20,000 members to oversee the vote at all of the polling stations. So this is just one indication of the local and international interest in these elections.
Shifting gears now, the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been bashing phones in an attempt to persuade MPs to vote for his new Brexit deal. The proposal will be put to Parliament in a special session on Saturday, but all the opposition parties and the Northern Irish DUP have said they will vote against. Pablo Navarrete reports.
On Thursday morning, it was announced that the British government of Boris Johnson and the European Union have agreed a new Brexit deal. Now, this will be put to the British Parliament in a special meeting on Saturday, where Boris Johnson will need approximately 320 votes to get the deal passed, barring any abstentions. Now, both sides have lauded, both the British government and the European Union have lauded this deal, but it does leave open the prospect of Boris Johnson having to seek an extension should it not be passed, although Boris Johnson has been adamant that the Brexit date of 31st of October, next Thursday, is the deadline, and Britain will be leaving. Equally, the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, has said that there will be no more extensions. Now, he actually does not have the power to unilaterally enforce this. It's up to the 27 leaders of the European Union, and the British Parliament has passed legislation demanding that Boris Johnson look for an extension should he not get a deal that's acceptable to Parliament. So Boris Johnson's team will be furiously lobbying to try and get that 320 votes he needs on Saturday. For his part, Jeremy Corbyn, the socialist leader of the Labour Party, has condemned the deal, said it's a bad deal, bad for worker rights for the NHS, and has called on Labour to oppose it. Equally, the Democratic Unionist Party won't be voting, allies of Johnson won't be voting for it, saying that it doesn't guarantee them a veto in the Northern Ireland Assembly. So the Johnson government is furiously lobbying now to try and get this new Brexit deal passed on Saturday.
That was Pablo Navarrete with that report. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has threatened to restart the operation against Kurdish forces in Syria next Tuesday if they do not withdraw from his designated safe zone. On Thursday, Turkey agreed to suspend its offensive in northern Syria for 5 days while Kurdish fighters pull out from the area.
If the United States keeps its promise to us by Tuesday night, at the end of 120 hours, the issue of the safe area will have been resolved. But if this promise is not fulfilled without any exception, the minute this time is up, the operation Source of Peace will resume where it stopped, and with even more determination.
In the Turkish border town of Akçakale, residents have shared their thoughts on the ceasefire agreement. The Turkish military offensive has left hundreds killed and injured, with more than 160,000 people having to flee.
We were forced to leave our villages because of the offense. They forced a demographic change that affected Turkmen minorities. They burned our homes and they took our lands. Now we are happy and hopeful with the entrance of the Turkish military and the Syrian National Army to our lands to liberate us from this gang.
At least 62 people were killed in Afghanistan's eastern Nangarhar province when a bomb exploded during prayers at a mosque. According to officials, more than 100 were injured. The force of the blast destroyed the building's roof. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack. At least 5 people have died and hundreds forced to leave their homes due to severe flooding in Abidjan and several cities in Ivory Coast. This as a result of torrential rains which led to many roads being blocked and sinkholes forming beneath some streets. Emergency agencies and the armed forces have continued the search for more casualties as the heavy rains persist. More than 100 people have been rescued and are in shelters.
The water got into the houses. We started putting things away a little bit. We couldn't save much. A lot of things have been left in the house. We have lost a lot of things. We were only able to get the children's clothes out and some for ourselves because given the water level, we couldn't get much out.
Kenya has rolled out a nationwide campaign to vaccinate girls against the human papillomavirus, or HPV, that is linked to some types of cancer. According to the Health Ministry, the vaccine will be given to 10-year-olds through public, private and faith-based health facilities. Last year, the ministry reported that over 3,200 women died of cervical cancer, with a total of 5,250 cases. Kenya is the 16th African country to embark on such a program. For our last story, Cuba's best-known ballet dancer Alicia Alonso has died at age 98. Co-founder of the Cuban School of Ballet, Alonso received countless awards, among them the National Dance Prize in Cuba and the Gold Medal of the Circle of Fine Arts of Madrid. Alonso was acknowledged by leaders around the world during her artistic career. So we leave you with more of the great Alicia Alonso in honor of her dedication to the world of arts. Until next time.
Documentary